Okay, I know this has been a long day and we are the last one, so thank you. But we are so excited. We have three mics up here. So we will, try to keep this as engaging as possible. I am super, super excited to talk with you. We were talking earlier, and I think the conversation is incredibly important about the customer journey as marketers, as brands, it's really, really important. So, how do we see this continue to change when AI will actually help guide the shopping journey? And how are you seeing this start to shift already at Aerin?
So I think AI's generative AI specifically is really interesting when it comes to e-commerce and how customers begin their journey. So when you think about us today, our customers often start their journey through search. But when you start to think about generative AI, tools like Perplexity, customers are going to start utilizing these tools to discover products. And what does that mean for brands and marketers? And how do we integrate ourselves into that customer journey? And what does that mean for e commerce, for websites, for apps, and so forth? I think it's really interesting if you start to experiment with it, start to throw some of your products into Perplexity or generative AI, ChatGPT, and ask, what is the best table for a summer party or a garden party, and how do you get it to serve a product from your particular site? So when I start to think about AI in particular, specifically generative I start to think about the way that consumers shop is going to fundamentally change.
It has to,
It has
right?
to, yeah.
Yeah. Especially, I think it's interesting as we think about the funnel and collapsing the funnel, right? AI is very specific, right now anyway, and I think it helps a lot for search. But then, as a brand marketer, how do you continue to market that conversation to the customer and continue those touch points, right? If you think about a physical store, being able to browse the aisle is very different than being on an e-commerce website, right? Where the algo is already directing you to where the merchants maybe want you to see, right? Or where marketing wants you to see. But now you have an extra layer.
Exactly. Like when we think about our retail, our store locations, it's about connecting with consumers. It's where you really get to establish that emotional connection. It's about the experience. And when you start to think about customers utilizing their devices with a layer of AI and an AI that's influencing them, it's going to become a distraction. So, how do you stand out? How do you continue to connect with consumers in an authentic way, in a meaningful way? And I think it's something that we all need to figure out, and I don't think we know yet. When I start to think about AI, I think about it as an interface. Like that is the future. So AI is going to be integrated into every single touch point. And if that's where the customer is going to begin their journey, what does that mean for a website? Will websites be deprecated? Will customers be transacting through these tools, through ChatGPT, or Perplexity, or even Google? Because you think about all the major players out there, and they're all prioritizing generative AI and AI.
And I think also, right, omni-channel as a buzzword, but really, like, this is how is this going to tie together? Because people are so used to their devices, but the handheld ones. So, like, what does that mean for, like, an Alexa? Some of these other things, like, how do these devices talk together? Do they not? Because of walled gardens, what does that actually look like? But I think the customer experience still has to be top of mind for brands and marketers.
Absolutely. I think it's really interesting what's happening with OpenAI and Apple partnering together. So until Apple improves Siri, they're going to be integrating OpenAI. So that there's going to be a lot more mass adoption to generative AI, I think, in the coming months. So as brands, we need to start to think about that because I think it's going to shift the way that customers shop and discover is going to change.
Right, and those customer moments too. And again, I think you had talked about the difference maybe between like how your mom might use it and your son, but that doesn't mean that they won't have similar search queries,
I think
right?
exactly. I thought it's so interesting. So my son is 6 years old, and he uses Siri for everything. It's what song is that? What is this? Like, there's constant questions, and my mother does the same. And my mother is 75 years old, so everybody's already starting to adopt this conversational way of communicating with agents or whatever you want to call them. So I really do believe this is the future, and I think we need to start to prepare ourselves. So one thing that we were talking about was SEO. So SEO is going to be completely different. We need to think about SEO in more of a conversational context. How are we going to produce content that makes us stand out in this sea of AI?
Right. And also, the adoption. I think, we were talking about some of the chat, like one-to-one features and what that looks like, and, customers maybe not knowing how to do that in certain instances on a website. And so, what does that look like for a website?
Exactly. I think you always have to put your customers first and streamline the user experience. Something that we're working on with one of our vendor partners is a guided shopping chat experience on the PDP. So what that's doing is it's taking input that we inject into it, as well as the data that lives within the platform from a personalization perspective, as well as it scans the site for information. So if you're looking at a light and you ask, can this go outdoors? There'll be a response. Does this have a lamp that goes with it? There will be a response. So it'll help guide the customer, it'll upsell. So this is something that we're currently working on.
That's great. How else are you looking to ensure authentic and trustworthy connections with your customers today and in the future? With AI, is it won't be the only solve, but it will be a part of that
I
conversation.
think we always have to think about AI as just an assistant.
Hmm.
There always has to be a human component. So you can begin with AI, but it's all about injecting your brand, your personality into it and refining it to make sure that it is representative of your brand. So that's something, even when we haven't spent too much time developing content utilizing generative AI for privacy reasons, obviously. But anytime that we've used it, it was always the first touch point, and then it was refined many times by a human. And I think we have to really think about it from that perspective of more of that assistant opposed to like the end final output.
Right. I guess I would say knowing how much you love data and information. How do you educate yourself and your team on what can constantly feel like a moving target?
So things are changing daily. So we share out on a regular basis. There's several different newsletters, podcasts that I personally love and listen to. So I'll share those out to my team. We also have like a weekly lunch and learn, which is a great opportunity for everyone to share information. I mean, it's changing every single day. There's great sources like there's Superhuman, there's the information. Like there's a lot of these different newsletters and tools. AI Exchange is great. And just following those, there's always news that's coming up. There's a lot on Substack, Discord, and so forth. And just continuing to share that out to your team and have those conversations to make sure everyone's up to date and educated, I think is incredibly important.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on what we were talking about on challenging your team on some of like the fun use cases to get
Yeah.
them comfortable?
So one thing that we did when ChatGPT first emerged was we were trying to figure out how we could utilize it for email subject lines. And I think one of the biggest challenges with using these tools is like you get out of it what you put into it. So if it's all about the prompt engineering and the prompts, so everyone went around and they had to come up with a holiday subject line for our frame collection utilizing ChatGPT, and it was fascinating that everybody had a different output. So I think it's really important when we start to think about utilizing these tools and implementing internally that you have a framework in place.
Yeah, for sure. Because I think if, again, back to that customer mindset, right? Like you can follow all these prompts, but if I'm getting something different than what you're getting, how do you then use that data to really personalize, right? Because it's great to have a lot of options, but if they mean nothing to me, if it doesn't resonate with me, you may have lost a sale, and in some cases, you may have lost a shopper.
Exactly, and it's also interesting when you use different AI tools. So there's a few great sites that we use to find tools. It's like Futurepedia, FutureTools.io, and you pull them up, and then there's thousands of different tools, and you could put the same prompts into the different tools, and there's a different output. So it's pretty fascinating.
And how is that tying back then to like your marketing moments or your product catalog, right? Site merchandising, like how are you using it within that?
So right now it's very limited. It's more just education and experimentation. We've utilized it for some SEO, and not the SEO that's going to be. I think that the way that we're going to change for more of this conversational AI search. But we've utilized it to inject keywords into meta descriptions and product descriptions and so forth. But utilizing our own content, obviously. So.
Right. And I think with SEO, keywords is going to be really, really interesting because that's how we bought for a long time. But conversationally, if I don't know what I'm looking for, I'm probably going to ramble quite a bit.
Oh.
So, also being able to parse out what I'm actually looking for, like the want and the need, I think will also be really interesting in the evolution of shopper experience.
And it's interesting. So we're a luxury lifestyle brand, and the majority of our marketing is really focused around these micro moments and really connecting with customers through these moments in their lives. And I think that's kind of going to be where we're going to be headed in terms of the way that we develop content for our products and so forth. You have to start to think about the context in which customers will be utilizing your products and how it will provide value to them, and then communicate that through the content, because that's sort of how the conversational contextual search connects.
Right. No, I agree with that a lot. Um, I have to ask, what are you most excited about as a marketer? Just like coming out of these couple of days, or what you've been doing with your team, or that your roadmap kind of vision.
I'm excited about all of the change. I feel like everything has been the same for so long, and there's the acceleration of AI and something new being introduced every day, new updates with ChatGPT, GPT 4.0, voice. There's so much for us to work with. And that for me is really exciting, and also just challenging us to think about the future. As I said before, how customers are going to change the way they shop, and what does that mean for the future of e-commerce? And will it be a website, or will it be something else? And how do we architect that?
Right. I guess doubling down on that, what are you most afraid's not the right word, right? But to your point, there is so much change, and change can happen really fast, but adoption can be very slow. Is there anything that you're worried about that maybe people are running towards too quickly, right? A little bit of that like slow down to run fast within your world, the people that you're talking to, right? Because it's an investment. It's an investment for your company. It's an investment for your customers. Is there anything that you're like, well, maybe let's pause a little bit here, or I don't know if that's going to work for us?
I think right now it's all about collecting information, educating, being aware. I think everyone needs to sort of put a halt on the execution, just because things are changing so quickly. And something that you've invested significantly into now may be irrelevant 2 months later. So I don't think we're there yet where we have to completely shift the way we do things, but we need to be aware and start to build those strategies and those roadmaps. But I think we're not ready for the execution yet. And you always have to think about your customer and what's relevant for them. Like, you don't want to invest into AI because it's AI, right?
Right, new shiny penny.
Exactly.
Not that this is, not a real thing or going to be an incredibly huge component of it, but again, it's a part of the journey. It's probably a layer, not the only piece. So also I think making sure that it is a well-rounded strategy, again, makes for a better customer experience.
Of course, absolutely. And I just think, data privacy, data governance, all this is so critical. Like cleansing your data, getting your data in the right state for all of this change is a great place to start.
And what are you guys doing at Aerin to stay ahead of the competition in terms of either in this space or right your competitive set within like the lifestyle brands? Does this kind of fit in as part of the strategy, or?
I think what we really lean into is selling a lifestyle opposed to products. And I feel like with generative AI and conversational search, there's something that we have sort of a step ahead in because our marketing strategies are already built around that. Now we just need to further integrate it into, let's say, the site experience from more of a content perspective. But our brand has really always been built on that lifestyle, and I think that's unique. We're so lucky that we have, a human face to the brand and someone that's inspirational. And I think that a lot of brands work so hard to create that human element, and that is, inherent to who we are.
Yeah, no, I mean, from a Firework perspective, right, it's really about bringing that customer experience from your in-store or your brand new marketing online. And I think there is a huge opportunity, but I am curious, right, what will happen to websites and deprecation and SEO? And I think that's something else that we really need to kind of have continual conversations about, just as marketers, as brands, as retailers, especially. What does that look like? How can you make sure that your products are being seen? Because the algos are very quick to kind of work in certain directions. So how do you keep your customers engaged with your brand?
Absolutely. And I also think it's important to look at the big players, look at the Amazons, the Apples of the world, and see what they're doing, thinking about it. Because if you think about Amazon and free shipping, I mean, they changed the way, they set the standard for how we ship products to customers. And sort of feel it's the same way. The customer expectations are going to change, their behaviors are going to change, and it's going to be led by some of these larger players.
Yep. And my previous employer was a Fortune 1 company. And I can say, though, it's, I think, really important to remember who your brand is, right? Because you have to have a pulse on what is happening in the industry. Because if you don't, I think you're already behind. But it's also then being able to say, okay, what worked for them? And what won't work for me? Like, what can I take, right? Because the resources are constrained. So if you kind of let the big guys test and learn some of these like points first, then you can really kind of double down again and be able to say, okay, but what works for my brand, my customer?
Exactly. Like you don't want to lose sight of who you are as a brand and what's important in driving value right now, and just observe what's happening with some of the other players out there.
Definitely. We still have a little bit of time left. Is there anything else that you wanted to share or any questions? I know it's late in the day.
No?
No questions?
No questions. Last chance. We don't have gift cards, but no. Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.